Hello, hamstrings friends. So you're watching this video because you're more interested in being able to touch your toes, but right now your forward fold looks a little something like this. We're gonna fix that, but we're gonna actually do that for a lot of hamstring stretches without doing a standing forward fold, because this actually places a lot of stress in your hamstrings. If you think about it, you've got all the weight of your upper body reaching down to the floor, stretching them out, and if you've got tight hamstrings, that's kind of a lot of weight to ask you to do. So I'm going to show you a lot more beginner-friendly stretches that you can do to work on your hamstrings to improve your forward fold. They're a teeny bit easier as you're getting started. But first, before we do any kind of stretching, always good to do a warm-up. So we're going to start with just a couple of minutes of movement. We'll start with some body weight squats. So you're going to start with your feet hip width apart, squatting your butt down as low as is comfortable. Does not have to be ass to the grass, does not have to be crazy low. All I want you to do is make sure your knees are staying behind your toes. Your heels are staying down. So we don't want butt coming down to our heels if they lift. Just a couple of regular old body weight squats. Starting to get things moving. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And coming up to standing, we're going to do a couple of good mornings. So for these, you're going to slightly bend your knees, and I want you to keep a super flat back. We're going to start leaning forwards as far as you can till you start to feel that stretch in your hamstrings. It may not be very far. You're probably not going to be leaning all the way forwards. You might stop at somewhere around 45 degrees because that's where you're starting to feel the stretch. Then I want you to think about pressing into both feet, squeezing your glutes as you come back up to standing. And again, nice flat back, leaning forwards, small bend in your knees, getting those hamstrings nice and stretched, and pushing into the feet. Coming back up. We're going to do that 8 more times. Leaning forwards, flat back, actively pushing your feet into the ground. So that's something we're adding in. 7, 6, 5, 4. Double checking your back is still nice and flat as you lean. 3, 2, and last one. Come on up. Now to make it a teeny bit harder, we're going to do these with one leg. So this is a little bit more like a single-legged deadlift. If balance is a bit of a challenge, do these by a wall with your hand on the wall, or you can do them with your hand on the chair or the back of the couch. So we're going to shift our weight to our left leg. Left leg either totally straight if your hamstrings are kind of flexible, or keeping it slightly bent if they're super tight. We're going to lift our right leg behind us. Start to lean forwards with a flat back as we're lifting that leg. We want to start feeling that stretch in our hamstring in that left leg. Once you feel the stretch, you're going to lift back up to start. So leaning forwards, maybe keeping that knee a little bent. Straight if you're actually pretty flexible, but bent if you're working on that toe touch. And back up. 8 more times. Total of 10. And 7. Keeping a nice flat back. 6, 5, 4, and you'll see I don't even have to lean all the way to 90 degrees before I feel that stretch. I can stop at 30 or 45 degrees. That's where I'm feeling it. 3, 2, and the last one. Then come on up, you can give that a little shake if it needs it. We'll switch sides. So now our right leg is going to be our working leg. Left leg sticks out behind. Take a little bend into that right knee. And we're going to start to lean forwards. Left leg just lifts to follow. Feel that stretch in your hamstring. And then back up to start. And 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then come on up. Give things a nice little shake. Then we're just gonna do some nice sloppy leg swings. So again, hand on the wall or chair for balance. We're gonna take our left leg and just swing it forward and back. Nice and loosey-goosey. Just letting it slide through the range of motion in your hip. If your hips kind of swivel a little bit, that's totally okay. Just a couple more swings on this leg. And then we'll slow it down. Switch legs. Now our right leg gets to swing. Loosey-goosey, letting that tension go. Letting that knee bend. Giving your foot a little flex so your toes don't accidentally jam into the floor. That's no fun. But relaxed. Loosey-goosey. And then slow it down. Good. Then let's come down to the floor and we're gonna start doing a little stretching for our knees. So find a little bit of wall space. We're gonna do legs at the wall. So for this, you're gonna start with your butt maybe about 12 inches away from the wall and walk your feet up the wall. Starting with bent knees, trying to find a stretch in your hamstring. If having bent knees and your butt away from the wall does not feel like a deep enough stretch, you can try to straighten out your legs. That still doesn't feel like a lot of a stretch. Go ahead and wiggle your butt a little bit closer and try to straighten your legs again. And we're just looking for a little bit of a supported stretch in our hamstrings. We're doing this on the wall to make sure we've got a nice flat back. So what I don't want to see is that tailbone starting to lift as you're straightening your legs, because then you're rounding your back and you're compensating for tight hamstrings. So we want to keep the bottom of your butt pressed down to the floor. That's going to help you feel that stretch. We'll hang out here for a couple more seconds. And then we're going to add a little bit of a movement. We'll do some wall heel slides. So from here, you'll bend your knees a little bit more. Let that stretch go. Nice and relaxed. This should feel comfy. And you're going to try to straighten your legs again, sliding your heels up until you feel that stretch. And then bending those knees, let the stretch go. And starting towards straightening them, finding that stretch again. Your legs may not go totally straight. That's totally fine if you're ending with your knees slightly bent, as long as you're feeling the stretch. We're going to do 7 more. Bending and sliding those heels up. And 6. And 5. If your feet feel like they're sticking to the wall, socks make this a little easier. And 4. Making sure you can still feel your hips on the floor and they're not starting to lift. 3. 2. And 1. On the last one, we're just going to hang out on our nice foot on the wall stretch. Feeling that stretch in your hamstrings. Knees probably still bent. That's where we'll be. If you were able to get your legs totally straight, maybe sneak your butt a little bit closer to the wall. Make it a little bit of a deeper stretch. And then when you're ready, you can come on out. You can bend your knees, let that stretch go. Find a comfortable way to come down to the floor. Maybe rolling, because you're super cool. And then we're gonna come doing a little bit of a lying down stretch. So I want you to grab a strap for this one, for a little bit of a help. You can use a yoga strap, nice long band like this. Pair of pants or a sweatshirt totally works at a pinch, even a belt. So we're gonna lie down onto our backs. Extend your left leg out long. And we're going to stretch out our right leg. So for this one, we're going to keep our knee nice and bent. Your strap's going to come to the bottom of your foot. We'll start to straighten our leg. We'll keep a little bit of a bend in the knee and start pulling that foot up until you feel a stretch in your hamstring. So you can still get a really nice stretch with a bent knee. We're gonna hang out here. About 20 or 30 seconds. Just breathing, nice and relaxed. Left leg staying on the floor, so we're not pulling in so much so that leg lifts. We're gonna keep that one down. And if things are feeling really good, maybe you try to straighten the knee just a tad, find your deeper hamstring stretch. You're already feeling maxed out, hang out where you are. And we'll relax, bend that knee. You can let your strap go. Give that leg a little shake if it needs it. And we'll switch sides. So now right leg staying on the floor. We're gonna lift up our left leg. Strap comes to the bottom of your left foot. We'll start to kick it towards straight, but keep a little bit of a bend in that knee. Then pulling it in towards your chest until you start to feel that stretch through your hamstrings. Hanging out here for about 30 seconds. Just breathing. And again, if this is starting to feel a little comfortable, go ahead and try to straighten that knee just a smidge, make it a little bit harder. Get a deeper stretch through that hamstring. And then we'll relax. Go ahead and bend that left knee, lower that foot, remove your strap. And then we'll come on up to standing for a little bit of a high pyramid pose. So for this one, we're gonna start facing our wall. Step your left foot forwards. Right leg's gonna be in the back. You can adjust those toes out about 45 degrees to the side for balance, but both of our legs are nice and straight. And I'm gonna lean forwards with a flat back. So I'm thinking about lifting my tailbone up, letting my belly drop instead of reaching with my arms. So this rounding is our no-no. We want nice flat back, even if your forward fold is barely leaning forwards at all. You can have your hands on your hips. You want your legs to do a little more work, or you can bring your hands to brace on that thigh. But we're looking to feel the stretch in the back of that left leg in our hamstring. If you've got tight calves, you might feel a little there too. We're just gonna hang out. Taking some deep breaths here. Good. And slowly lift your torso back up to upright. Then we're gonna make this a little bit more active. We'll take our hands to our hips, and this time leaning forwards with a flat back. Starting to feel that stretch pull into your hamstring, so leaning forwards as much as you need to feel that stretch. Probably don't need to lean forwards all the way. Stopping maybe around 30 or 45 degrees. And then I want you to really actively and intentionally push into that left foot, that front foot, as you lift your torso back up to straight. So that's helping engage your hamstring while it's getting stretched, gonna make it stronger. So we're leaning forwards, nice flat back, not rounding, thinking about lifting that tailbone up. And then once you found your stretch in your hamstring, pushing into that front foot. Nice flat back lifts, hamstring engages. 8 more times, total of 10. Leaning forwards, pushing into that front foot, lifting back up. And 7. 6. 5. Remembering to really push into that foot. That's something we're adding. 4. 3. 2. And last one. And then you can give that leg a little shake if it needs a little shake, and we'll switch sides. So stepping that right foot forwards, right leg is now the one that's going to get stretched. My left toes are pointing out at a diagonal just for balance. I've got my feet about hip width apart, so I'm not balancing on a tightrope. This is feeling pretty stable. And from here, leaning with a flat back, I'm gonna think about lifting my tailbone up as I drop my chest forwards, as opposed to reaching with my arms. Then I'm gonna stop wherever I feel that stretch in my hamstring, either hands on your hips or maybe on your thigh for support. We'll just hang out in this nice stretch for like 20 seconds. Taking a little breather before you do the hard one, where you have to work a little bit more. And then slowly start to lift your torso back to upright. And we'll do those straight-legged good morning. So hands come to your hips. So your legs are gonna do a little bit more work. We don't have hand support. And then leaning forwards. Feeling that stretch start to come into your hamstring. Once you feel that stretch, pushing into our right foot in the front, lifting our nice flat back up to standing. 9 more times for a total of 10. And 8. And that's 7. And once these are starting to feel a little bit easier, you can make them harder by adding more body weight. 6, by bringing your arms out to the side or overhead. We got 4 more. And 3, remembering to push into that front foot as you lift. 2. And 1. Coming on up. Giving that leg a nice little shake out. Then we'll take things down to the floor, do a little bit of straddle work. So normally when we sit in our straddle, it's pretty much doing a pike stretch or opening our legs out to the side. So if your hamstrings are really tight and you find that it's hard to sit up straight and you got a little bit of a slouch in your low back and you just can't quite lift straight, I would encourage you to sit on a block if you have it. If you don't have a block, stack of books, pillow, couch cushion works really nice. But we want our starting position to have a nice flat back. Maybe lifting up your hips if you need to, and less concerned about how far apart your legs are for this because we're doing mostly our hamstrings. So sitting on the floor or on a block if you need it, we're gonna extend our legs out to the side. And if this is feeling like a pretty crazy deep stretch already, go ahead and bend your knees a little bit. And then we're gonna reach forwards as much as you need to start to feel that stretch in your hamstrings. So you can totally feel that stretch even if you've got your knees bent, or if this is feeling a little too easy, go ahead and try to straighten those knees a little bit. And we're just gonna hang out here. You'll notice my toes are pointing up towards the ceiling. My knees are pointing up to the ceiling. What we wanna avoid is having those start to cave to the front. That's not really great for your hips long term. So keeping those toes pointing up. I've got a nice flat back. I'm not reaching forwards and slouching. Hanging out. But if my forward fold doesn't look like much of a fold, as long as you're feeling the stretch, that's what we want. Then we're gonna make this one a teeny bit more active. Walk your hands back towards your hips so we can lift up nice and tall. I'll show you this one from the side. So I'm in my nice comfortable straddle. Legs might not be super far apart because that's where I'm at. I've got my nice flat back. For these ones, you can either have your hands on the floor for support or at your waist. But either version, we're gonna lean forwards, starting to feel that stretch at the bottom of your legs and your hamstrings. Once you found that stretch, kick both of your heels into the mat. Lift your torso back up to straight. So we're leaning forwards. Even if it's just an inch or two, it does not have to be a huge lean, but actively pushing your heels into the ground. Lift yourself back up. With hands on the floor is feeling pretty easy. You can make this one a little bit harder by taking your hands to the hips. Not using hands for support, or just like when we were standing, arms out to the side, or overhead. Adds a little bit more body weight for your legs to have to support. So we'll do about 5 more of these. Pushing heels into the ground as you lift. That's contracting our hamstrings. So right now we're getting a stretch. Kicking your heels into the ground is telling them to contract. So they're getting a little bit stronger while they're in that stretched position, which is what we want. And 2. And the last one, we'll just hang out in our forward fold. Hands coming to the floor. Feel that's nice stretch through your hips. Heels. And then you can slowly lift your torso. We'll come on up. And then we'll end with a classic downward dog. And I want you to forget about most of what you think like when you look at downward dog. So we're not going to think about heels to the floor. We're not going to think about straightening your legs. Knees are going to stay super duper bent, but I want you to think about your pelvis and your tailbone. So what we're going to do is push on up to a downward dog. A good rule of thumb for how to get in is coming to a plank. That's usually a good distance between your hands and the balls of your feet. We're going to lift our hips up and generously bend your knees. So I want to bend them enough that you've got room to try to lift your tailbone towards the ceiling. So you can see I've got a nice flat low back here. My heels are still pretty high off of the ground, and my knees are super bent, but I'm still feeling a stretch in my hamstrings. As this gets a little easier, you can work on starting to straighten out those legs, as long as it does not come with a compensation around in your low back. So you can see my tailbone, instead of being lifted towards the ceiling, started to tuck down towards the floor. This is not a great hamstring stretch. Your hamstrings is attached to your sits bones, which are those little bones at the bottom of your butt. So that's what we're trying to lift towards the ceiling. It is physically making your hamstrings longer. So pull those up to the ceiling. Hang out here for another 20 or so seconds. If this is getting a little tiring, you can bend one knee then the other. Take a little movement. Again, you can forget about your heels, forget about your calves. We're not focusing on those today. And then when you're ready, bringing your knees back down to the floor. And then let's check in on a forward fold. See how it's feeling. So for this one, we're going to have a nice flat back. And I would even encourage you to grab a chair or something that's tall that you can put your hands on for support. So from standing with our legs nice and straight, feet hip width apart, you're going to start to hinge at the hips, thinking about lifting your tailbone. So back is nice and flat, no rounding as you reach to the floor. Hands may be coming to your thighs, or maybe they're coming to a chair for support. And seeing how far you can comfortably lean with the flat back. You can even see I've got a tiny micro bend in my knees. They're not totally locked out straight. My knees hyperextend. There's a hang out here, seeing how this feels. If this is still feeling tight, go ahead and bend one knee than the other. But having support under your hands is a much nicer way to do your forward fold stretch, as opposed to just reaching all of your body weight for your floor. Your poor hamstrings may not be ready for that amount of work. But that's what we're working up to over time. So this is a really nice way to take a picture so you can have progress pics over time. So as you're continuing to do these stretches on a regular basis, you can see slowly your chest is dropping a little bit lower until eventually you can even bring fingers to the floor.